In this video we dive into the story of the most twisted mind in history. A serial killer who drank his victim's blood. Let's get right into the story. This man, at a young age, had already begun to exhibit signs of mental illness. But his strict and physically violent father did little to help him develop into a good person. He had always been troubled and unhappy, and as he got older, his symptoms got worse. He frequently wet the bed, lit many minor fires, and showed evidence of animal cruelty. These are definitely the telltale signs of a young, twisted serial killer. Reminds me of Pet Sematary for some reason. The McDonald Triad, also known as the sociopathy triad, was first presented by psychiatrist J.M. McDonald in 1963 as a way to anticipate a patient's sociopathy. This man was Richard Chase, and just wait to hear of what this guy did to his victims. As a result of his father supposedly throwing him out of the house, things got worse. Without supervision, Chase started abusing alcohol and narcotics, which spread to other drugs as well. The symptoms of his disease were made worse by psychotropic medications. He was under the impression on multiple instances that his heart had stopped. And at times, he believed he was a walking corpse, just like the vampire whose name he would eventually take. But being periodically dead was no excuse to ignore his health, worried that he was lacking in vitamin C. It is said that he pressed whole oranges to his forehead in the hope that his brain would immediately absorb the nutrients. If that isn't absolutely insane, I don't know what is. He believed that his cranial bones had split apart and started to move below his skin, shifting positions and jumbling like puzzle pieces. This was one of his oddest and most intense hallucinations. In an effort to keep an eye on their movements, he shaved his head. Unsurprisingly, Chase was given a paranoid schizophrenia diagnosis at the age of 25. And was institutionalized in 1975 to save him from endangering himself. The staff at the psychiatric hospital gave him the nickname Dracula after they saw him murder. And try to drink the blood of several birds in an effort to fend off the effects of a poison that, in his imagination, was gradually reducing his own blood to powder. His attempted injection of rabbit's blood, which caused him to become severely ill, was what led to his institutionalization. Chase was freed to live with his mother despite a number of occurrences that were quite similar. Since the staff felt that they had successfully rehabilitated him. It was a fatal choice because Chase's health was getting worse, not better. Despite being released into his mother's custody, Richard Chase was not obligated by law to remain in her care. He moved out shortly after being discharged from the mental institution and later claimed that he believed his mother was poisoning him. He moved into an apartment he and a few other young men he considered pals shared. They apparently didn't know Chase very well since they asked him to leave after he continued acting strangely, including abusing drugs and constantly being high, as well as a tendency to roam the flat naked. However, Richard Chase refused, and it appeared to his former housemates that leaving the flat and looking for other housing would be the easiest course of action. Chase was once more on his own, which was a situation that almost always made his symptoms worse. He rekindled his love with blood and started hunting and killing little creatures. He was discovered by Nevada authorities in August 1977. Carrying a bucket containing a liver in the back of his pickup and covered in blood, late one night in the Lake Tahoe region. They released Chase after determining the blood and organ belonged to a cow, not a person. Once more, systems that could have assisted Richard Chase and safeguarded others let them down. As it was, he became more and more engulfed in the strength of his delusions because he was alone and had no one to watch him or restrain him. Eventually, these delusions drove him to commit the inconceivable act. Please be aware, this story gets a lot more gruesome. Richard Chase was dissatisfied and lonely on December 29, 1977. He was upset because his mother had refused to let him spend Christmas with them. His first victim was a 51-year-old man named Ambrose Griffin who was assisting his wife in bringing in groceries at the time. Chase pulled out a .22 caliber revolver and shot him in the chest as he drove by their street. It marked the start of an infatuation. On January 23, 1978, Chase broke in through Teresa Wallen's unsecured front door when she was pregnant. During questioning, he would claim that he believed an unlocked door was a type of invitation to him, and a justification for what transpired next. All of his victims from that point forward were homeowners who had forgotten to lock their door. That means lock your doors, folks. The identical weapon that Richard Chase used to shoot Griffin was used to shoot Teresa Wallen 3 times. Disturbing content warning, you were forewarned. Chase then pulled out her organs and drank her blood after stabbing her with a butcher knife. As a cup, he allegedly used a yogurt carton. The most horrifying murders were those committed by Chase. Richard Chase was known to practice necrophilia with the corpses of his victims in addition to cannibalism. 4 days after the murder of Wallen, on January 27, 1978, Chase discovered Evelyn Moroth's door to be unlocked. Inside were her cousin David Ferreira, 22, her 6-year-old son Jason Moroth, and a friend named Dan Meredith. Meredith was shot in the head and left for dead in the corridor. After that, Chase took his car keys. In Evelyn's bedroom, Jason and Evelyn were discovered. The young boy had been shot twice in the head, point blank. Evelyn had been eaten in half. Her stomach had been sliced open, and her internal organs were missing. Her eyes had been attempted to be removed, and her body had been sodomized. David Ferreira, the infant that Evelyn Moroth had been watching, was missing from the crime scene. Months later, the child's headless body was discovered behind a church. This man, Richard Chase, is he the most twisted mind to ever walk the earth? During Chase's trial, the account of what transpired that evening came to light. The Sacramento vampire killer had taken Ferreira's body and escaped in Meredith's stolen automobile after being startled by a visitor's knock. A neighbor was informed by the guest, who then dialed 911. Chase's prints were recognized by the authorities in Moroth's blood. When the police examined Chase's flat, they discovered human brains in his fridge and bloodstains on all of his kitchenware. Chase was finally arrested that day. The infamous Vampire of Sacramento trial started on January 2 and lasted over 5 months. Due of Chase's lunacy, the defense lawyers argued that the death penalty recommendation should be denied. Richard Chase's jailmates supposedly tried to persuade him to commit suicide after they learned of his misdeeds because they were so disgusted with him. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury ultimately decided to support the prosecution. The vampire killer, Richard Chase, was found guilty on 6 charges of murder and given the death penalty by gas chamber. Knowing of his atrocities, his fellow inmates were terrified of him. They frequently pushed him to commit suicide. Richard Chase did precisely that, hoarding the anti-anxiety medication the jail officials had supplied him until he had amassed enough for a lethal overdose. The day following Christmas in 1980, he was discovered dead in his cell. What do you think about this story? Did Richard Chase have the most twisted mind? Was he possessed his entire life? Soulless? Let us know in the comments what you think. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe.